Greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to the night ending bonus upload, or the bonus upload before the Saturday Nightmares live from New York live stream at 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Before we get into this bonus, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to tonight's night-ending bonus upload, shall we? Tonight's first encounter. So this happened Saturday, August 28th, 2021 in British Columbia, Canada. I'm not entirely sure what I encountered. I live in a small to medium-sized town, not a large city, in a suburban neighborhood that's situated close to the Fraser River. Everything around here is mostly woods, and there's also a large Forest Service road system a few blocks away that goes quite far into the bush. A little bit more about my immediate area around my home. Sorry, it helps to understand where everything is. There's a little park across from my house with a small playground and a paved path that goes about a half a kilometer until it meets up with the main road. Down the hill from there, there's a newer housing development area that has a large cleared area, previously bush, and a long gravel path that leads to a meadow and eventually the road. If you walk to the bush at the park across from my house and take a right in the woods, there's a narrow trail that's quite overgrown that pops you out at the start of the hill down by the new development. There's also quite a few trails within that section of bush at the park. About 100 meters away to the right of the hill is another park that connects to the Forest Service road system and endless bush. From the park across from my house to the end of the meadow is about 1 to 1.5 kilometers in total. The meadow connects to a large gravel area across from a high school up a hill, which is where this begins. So here's what happened. This is all later at night at around 11:30 p.m. Me and my girlfriend were in the gravel lot in my SUV across from the high school, where we were talking, and she eventually fell asleep, as we had been walking around all day, and the fair was in town. About 15 minutes after she was asleep, I started to get an eerie feeling like I was being watched, and had a feeling like we had overstayed our welcome. I didn't like it at all, and always trust my gut when I get feelings like this, so I started to wake my girlfriend up. Just as she's starting to wake up, I heard what sounded like someone shouting, kind of like, "Hoo" or "Ha," further down the hill into the meadow. I would have disregarded it, but it caught me off guard a bit, since it sounded almost doubled, like the person had a chorus pedal or a pitch shifter in their voice. It spooked me a bit because of that, and I hadn't heard anyone yell like that before. I finished waking my girlfriend up, and we drove away from there into the elementary school parking lot down the road from the hill leading to the new development. I told her what happened, and we joked about it being spooky and whatnot. Then I looked up videos to try and find something that matched what I had heard, and Skinwalker's screams/vocalizations were what matched up most. Unfortunately, I scrolled into the comments, which mentioned the further away the scream is, the closer it is to you. It spooked me for a moment, but I chalked it all up to coincidence. For fun, we decided to drive down the hill to the new development, as it's dark and spooky. It has woods on one side where the park is, and has a gravel turnaround for vehicles with a gate at the end where the gravel path starts. As we were going down the hill near the top, I got a very strange and uneasy feeling, almost like a slight panicked feeling. But it went away shortly after we got to the bottom of the hill. My girlfriend said she had gotten a feeling as well, so we decided to turn around on the side street and leave. I decided to play some music that always helps take the scared feelings away from me. The Doom Eternal soundtrack, specifically Super Gore Nest, and put the pedal to the metal on the accelerator while going up the hill to make me feel more comfortable and like nothing could touch me. We were about 3/4 of the way up the hill, and feeling came back and hit us full force. The closer we got to the top where the trail comes out of, the stronger it got. The only way I can describe it is pure terror. It wasn't fear or dread, it was terror. We both had a physical reaction to it. We got intense chills, and we could feel the goosebumps on our skin all over our body. We both started getting choked up and teary-eyed, and I became short of breath for a moment. I must have gone from 60 kilometers an hour up the hill to 80 after cresting it, and it felt like if we had stopped, we surely were going to die. It was the most terrifying experience either of us have ever had, and we didn't even see anything. I've driven past many animals at night, from deer to bear to coyote, etc. And have been outside walking home alone at night with a bear going through garbage cans at my neighbor's house. I've dirt biked past a mama bear with cubs and a mama moose, and I thought those were the scariest experiences. No scary experience I've had, from a car accident when I was young to almost being hit 4 times during road construction from dumb drivers, can even come close to that feeling I had that night. The Doom soundtrack turned the feeling from being a badass into the feeling like it was my anthem of death. It was truly the most terrifying experience. After getting out of Dodge, we went to a well-lit mall parking lot and calmed down for a bit. Still shaken, I drove my girlfriend home and had a very anxious and fear-ridden drive home, as the park across from my house connects only 150 meters away from where this encounter took place. When I got home, I made sure everything was locked up tight, had a little weed to calm down, and then went to bed while on a video chat with my girlfriend. At 3:30, maybe 3:45, I woke up to a mild return of panic. About 5 minutes later, I fell back to sleep. I dreamt of the experience all night. The next morning, my girlfriend told me she had heard tapping on my window at around 3 in the morning, which made me shudder as my window is about 9 feet off the ground. I don't know what to make of these experiences, but I will definitely not be walking around my house alone at night ever again. We're going to go back on a drive there at night again and see if it happens. Not sure if that's a stupid idea, but my curiosity about cryptids and the like has piqued, and I need to know what's lurking around there. Thank you. Good old creepypastas and Reddit to really just destroy Native American lore. We have a skinwalker in British Columbia, Canada. No, you've got a shapeshifter, but not a skinwalker. Definitely, probably the smartest idea would not to be going back to the location of your experience, but that's on you. Anyway, moving on. Tonight's second encounter. I've had some bizarre and terrifying experiences in and around a friend's house I stayed at for a while when I was younger, in rural mid-Michigan. After so many occurrences, I asked the owner of the house about it over and over. They are Anishinaabe, Native American. They kept pretending I didn't say anything at first, then kept telling me not to bring it up. I eventually got to drinking with them, and they'd open up about how there's a bear walker in the woods out back and something terrible happened in the house. Kept saying to not acknowledge it and never investigate or go toward anything, and to stay indoors. But the problem was, indoors was just as scary. They also seemed very convinced they knew what they were talking about, and that it was something that has been following their family for a long time. I saw a ghoulish, pale human face outside their windows and in the woods multiple times, and noises. They had a dog that stayed outdoors, and it went nuts barking most nights. Every time I tried to see what it was barking at in the woods, it would yelp and hide in its doghouse, and there would be a strange noise or rustling in the trees. One night I was outside with my friend, and we kept feeling a presence in the field across the street, and as soon as we both started talking about it, these human-like shrieks came from that direction, and we both freaked and ran inside. More strange stuff happened after that. It felt like I was in months-long horror film, and felt very unreal. Haven't really told anyone about it since it happened. I lived there for 3 months, and I've never been able to explain the things that happened in a rational way. Whatever it was, it really did seem like it was trying to get me to come out to it. I felt like I was going insane. Today's third experience. I should mention that I had never heard of cryptids before being stationed in Colorado. When I did, I didn't know what to make of them and used to talk about them as a joke with my friends. The first experience I had, I took one of my buddies up to San Isabella National Forest, which I've been through many times before. We drove out there at around 9 p.m. and rode some trails out to the heart of the forest looking for cryptids. But really, I was just screwing with him and going along for a trail ride. At the turnaround point, I got that cliché feeling of being watched, but was driving with my backup camera on the whole time. The trail was a bit dusty, but I started to notice an almost man-like shape running behind the vehicle from a distance. I didn't say anything at first because I thought maybe it's just me, so I stopped for a minute and asked my friend if he saw anything in the camera, and he described the same thing. We then rolled down the windows and listened for any movement outside. With nobody else in a 250 square mile forest, we simultaneously heard a little boy cry out for help, and our heads snapped towards each other, and my friend said, "Drive!" We kept moving back on the trail and seeing the thing in the camera, standing as tall as a spare 35-inch tire on my lifted Jeep while running on all fours. When we got to the fork in the trail that turns back the way we came, I decided to turn and head back just because I was curious and wanted a definitive interaction. My buddy wasn't interested in proving there was bad crap out in these woods, but I was driving. After a few minutes, he starts groaning loud like he was hurt and covering his face. When I asked him what was wrong, I get hit with the sensation of absolute dread and sensory overload. When I was younger, I practiced black magic, and I can say with absolute certainty that it felt like a demonic presence. My eyes were tearing uncontrollably, and I could hardly breathe or speak, at which point I turned around on the trail, and we left for good, still with a clear humanoid shape tailing us out of the woods. He later told me he heard something make a noise out his window that started like a low gurgling but raised to a loud scream just like a howler monkey. I never heard anything, but the sensation was overbearing and physically crippling. After getting back on the road and stopping for gas, we found muddy handprints on the rock guard and tire gate of my Jeep. It was spotless before leaving. The second encounter, a few weeks later, I took some friends up there, minus the one from the first time, on what you would call an armed expedition. I was definitely disappointed in their tactical proficiency and weapon handling, considering we were all soldiers, but they were willing to do this with me. Their We're 5 of us this time, and we were armed with 2 rifles, a 12-gauge, and sidearms. After driving down the same trail and having a few odd experiences, such as hearing movement in the dark, glowing red eyes, and some heard singing, we decided to dismount and walk the footpath. This is around October and early for snow, but OFC, as we get out of the vehicle, it starts snowing, almost a whiteout. Maybe 50 meters down the trail, we hear the movement of something really big on our right side in the trees, and to me it sounded like it could only be a moose. One of the guys found a stick teepee off the trail, and we checked it out for a bit. There were some other weird bundles of sticks tied to the tree branches, but we kept moving. One guy in our group, who wasn't convinced and thought these creatures were just BS, tried to be Mr. Hardass and walked ahead of the group with just my 12-gauge and no flashlight. When I hear the movement in the woods again, I call everyone into a circle in case we get charged by the bull moose. He starts yelling, "WTF is that? Give me some light." And we shine the handheld spotlight in the direction he's holding the shotgun. He tells us to go back, to hurry, never lowering his weapon. I pretty much had to herd him back, watching all directions, and a few times situating ourselves for a confrontation as we heard noises and more movement from something tearing through the trees, circling us from multiple directions. When we made it out of the woods and began mounting back into the Jeep, he told me what he had seen. This tall, pale, skinny creature just sitting there ahead of us on the trail. He said it had some kind of thin, shaggy hair on its head, and he thought it was a log till it turned its head and looked right at him in the light. We heard a few scant screams from the woods, but it departed. After these 2, I took a few more trips out there in similar armed groups. But aside from the similar noises and other things like sounds of chains jingling and some responses to our whistling, there were no other interactions. When I would whistle, the woods nearby would whistle back. I want to continue studying these creatures, though I'm back in Florida now. I'm hoping to find some here. Tonight's final encounter. I'm in college, and me and 7 of my friends from school went on a backpacking trip. We had 2 experienced leaders. We drove to Zaleski State Forest, which is in the Appalachian region of Ohio. It was early April, and it was cold, and everything was still dead from the winter. After hiking miles into the forest, we set up camp at the backpacking campsite, and there were a couple other groups of people as well. A few of them were friendly older couples, and then 2 college-age girls. Everyone was pretty spread out from each other. We set up camp further away from everyone else. I have always been able to sense energies of places, and the energy in this area was not great. It was almost spooky. Each of us had individual one-person tents, and we formed kind of a cluster in the site, with my tent being in the back, so no one was behind me. Our cluster was also right next to the forest because this backpacking site was like a big cleared-off square in the middle of the trees. Fast forward, I'm dead asleep at 2 in the morning, and I wake up to leaves crunching right behind my tent. I hear footsteps walking in circles around my tent. Then they had a sort of heaviness to them that couldn't be a deer or a dog. Also, it sounded like it was bipedal. I can't make this up. This creature was circling my tent for a long period of time, slowly creeping up to the side of my tent and then just stopping for periods of time, and then would move on to walking around the rest of our tent cluster. I could hear a human-like breathing from a mouth when it was close to my tent, like a light sort of heaving. I was shaking, too scared to unzip my tent and investigate. I kid you not. This occurred for hours, and it seemed I was the only one awake. Out of nowhere, I see an illuminated light shape from my tent, although I couldn't tell what it was from inside the tent because it was all zipped up. It was like a warm glow. I may have assumed it was someone's flashlight, except no one was moving. I was paralyzed with fear. I simply couldn't believe it was an animal. At some point, I fell asleep due to sheer exhaustion, but I could hear the heavy footsteps circling until I did. In the morning, I questioned my fellow campers about it, and my leader adamantly and honestly admitted she had heard the footsteps and noises as well, admitting it was bizarre and she would have investigated had she not been so groggy. One of the boys in the group said he also noticed the light that came on, but thought it was someone else. Not a single person in the group went up to go to the restrooms or turned a flashlight on that night. I've heard things about the Appalachian regions being creepy and bizarre, and now I believe it. Alright, folks, I hope you all enjoyed this bonus before we get into tonight's Saturday Nightmares live from New York at 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just something to help the time pass by a little quicker. Guys, thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and honestly, what gives people a place to share their experiences, ideas, and theories. Thank you. Stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there. They're definitely dangerous. Share this information with the people you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for answers, and God bless.